Okay, so I'm just talking about hip pain. Now, many people call it hip pain. It can be standing up from a chair and it bites you here in the glutes, in the butt muscles here. Especially with runners, they can get very hip pain. Sometimes it's the sacroiliac joint. Now, the stretch I want to show you is probably one that you may already know, the thread the needle stretch, and I'm going to show you a version or various versions to do that. If you do this in the gym on the mat, you won't have any support for your head, but you may prefer to have head support, and it's something like this. So here we are on the mat, and this is the thread the needle stretch, and it's called thread the needle because you pick this leg up and you'll feel the stretch on the opposite leg, and you can tilt from here, and this stretch goes right away into the glutes, or if you want to call it the ITB band, it's the ITB band, but it's stretching from here. And one way to get the stretch is like this, and the other way to do this, there is an easy way, and sometimes easy is good, and that's on a chair. So here's the same exercise on a chair, and rather than putting my leg across and lifting the leg up, I can use the chair to do most of the work. So the idea is I push my knee away and I pull my foot towards me, careful of straining the knee, and I'll feel it there in the lateral side of the buttock, or here to here. So it's quite an easy stretch to do for tight hips. Now, one other thing to show you here, there are alternative versions, and if you were going to do a twist, you could do a cross twist to achieve a very similar effect through here, through the ITB, through the hip. Now, the best way to do a cross twist is to shunt your hips opposite to the direction that you take your knees to keep your head and tail in line. And I'll go through that again. Go back to neutral, shunt the hips away, and then do a cross twist. The idea is the head and tail stay in midline. The same would be true if you did a leg lift, which could be a core exercise. I'd move my hips opposite to the direction of my knees, and that's the way it can be done as a core exercise. It's mostly going to go to the lower back to neutral, hips opposite to the direction of the knees, and that's the way it goes. Now, what I see a lot in the gym on the mat is people sort of fling their leg across, hoping it's going to click somewhere, and it's very sloppy. And that's not what we do. We don't do sloppy because you're twisting your back, you're in a back bend. What we do is accuracy. So you may find in a cross twist you don't need to align, but it might be better to move the whole pelvis away the opposite direction to the knees before you start. And it can be subtle. A little movement to the opposite side, there's a cross twist. And you could even try that with a thread and needle, but it really depends on the tightness of your glutes, what's going to be right for you. One other thing before we finish with the twists is that there's no reason why you can't do those as a standing exercise, like so. So it would be something like this. trying to keep the knee at about a 90-degree angle rather than bending it. It's, if you like, a modified pigeon pose, and you can experiment with the height, like so. For me, I could come a little higher. The standing leg fairly vertical. You don't really want to twist the knee up. This is a 90-degree right angle, and then I could hinge forward, but keeping my pelvis symmetrical, not twisting, hinging forward with a twist. That would be one variation of a hip stretch for what I call the piriformis, the knee at a 90-degree angle. You could use a stool, you could use a chair. Now, if you go out running, of course you don't have any equipment. So let me show you the runner's version of this. And over here. So the camera needs to be looking at me. So over here, camera person there. So the same position, which some of you may know as a pigeon pose, to here. Now, my suggestion would be to aim for a 90-degree angle with the knee. Yes, it's much easier to bend the knee to 45 degrees, then you're in the pigeon pose. But this in some ways is easier on your knee, but be very careful of knee injury, because the knee should not twist. It's a hinge joint only in one plane of movement. The problem here is you tend to fall over sideways, so I tend to fall over, and I'm in a modified lunge, a modified pigeon, but it's a very strong stretch on my right glute and right piriformis. And I'll show you that from the other side. If we go into it from a lunge, making sure the tail is down, the pubis up, I'm engaging my core. I use the line of the carpet so you can see a modified pigeon pose with the knee at a 90-degree angle. It is tricky not to fall over. You tend to fall over to the forward leg side. So you could put a bolster or yoga block under this hip, under the buttock, if you had one. What I mean by that is, if you have equipment, use it. Use a brick, better still a bolster, that stops you falling over. But anyway, it's something to play with. Whatever works for you, hip stretches, doesn't have to be on your back, supine position. It could be using a stool, a chair, a table. I think you'll find that's quite an effective hip stretch. It's exactly the same as what I was just doing there on the floor and what you could do lying on your back. Okay, have fun, stop if it hurts. Don't push yourself too far, a little bit at a time.